I'm 80 years old, and I need to tell you something about discipline that might save your relationship with your children. For 22 years, I believed I was making my son strong. I thought I was preparing him for the real world. I was wrong about everything. My name is Robert. 22 years ago, when I was 58, I got a phone call at 3:17 in the morning. It was the hospital. My son Michael was unconscious in the emergency room. Heroin overdose. He was 24 years old. Sitting in that waiting room, not knowing if my boy would live or die, I realized something that shattered everything I thought I knew about being a father. I hadn't been raising a son. I'd been breaking one. I was career military, 25 years in the army. I believed discipline was everything. Order, respect, consequences. That's how you build character. That's how you prepare someone for life. When Michael was born, I knew exactly how I was going to raise him. No nonsense. No participation trophies. No coddling. The world is tough, and tough people survive. From the time he could walk, Michael lived under military rules. Make your bed every morning, corners tight enough to bounce a quarter. Yes, sir. No, sir. Chores done without being asked. Homework completed before anything else. When he made mistakes, there were consequences, real ones. No allowance for a week, extra chores, sometimes just the cold shoulder until he figured out what he'd done wrong. I thought I was teaching him responsibility. When Michael played Little League, I was the father shouting from the sidelines. Focus. Don't quit on the play. Winners don't give up. Other parents would look at me like I was too intense, but I didn't care. I was making my son a winner. When he brought home a B on a test, I'd ask why it wasn't an A. When he complained something was too hard, I'd tell him life is hard. When he cried, I'd tell him men don't cry. Crying was weakness, and I wasn't raising a weak son. Toughen up, Michael. The world won't give you a participation trophy. The world will knock you down, and you better be strong enough to get back up. I thought I was giving him tools. I thought I was giving him strength. But that wasn't the real mistake yet. Michael grew up quiet, obedient. He followed the rules, got decent grades, stayed out of trouble. I was proud my discipline was working. He graduated high school, went to community college, got a job at a warehouse. Nothing spectacular, but steady work, good work. I thought he was on the right path, but I started noticing things. He was thin, too thin. His eyes looked hollow. He'd visit for family dinners and barely speak, barely eat. When I'd ask him questions, he'd give short answers. Yes, sir. No, sir. Just like I'd taught him, I told myself he was just growing up, becoming a man. Men don't need to talk about everything. Then came that phone call, 3:17 in the morning. Mr. Robert, this is St. Mary's Hospital. Your son Michael has been brought to our emergency room. You need to come immediately. I drove to that hospital faster than I'd ever driven in my life. Found Michael unconscious, tubes down his throat, machines beeping. The doctor said they'd found him in his apartment. His neighbor heard a crash, heroin overdose. My son, the boy I'd raised to be strong, had been using heroin for 3 years. 3 years, and I had no idea. Michael survived. Barely. The doctors said 10 more minutes and we would have lost him. When he woke up 2 days later, I was sitting beside his bed. I'd been there for 48 hours straight. When he opened his eyes and saw me, the first thing he said was, "I'm sorry, sir." Sir. My son was lying in a hospital bed after nearly dying, and he was calling me sir. That's when something broke inside me, not him. Me. For the next week, while Michael was in the hospital, I sat in his room and really looked at my son for the first time in years. Really looked at him. He was thin. So thin his cheekbones were sharp against his skin. His hands shook. When nurses came in, he'd say yes ma'am and no ma'am and barely make eye contact. He was polite, respectful, quiet, everything I'd taught him to be. But he was also broken, completely, utterly broken. When I tried to talk to him about what had happened, about the drugs, he would just say, "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again, sir." Like he was reporting to a commanding officer instead of talking to his father. And that's when I started to understand. For 24 years, my son had been reporting to me, not talking to me, not sharing with me, reporting. I trained him to hide his struggles because struggles meant weakness. I trained him to keep his problems to himself because problems meant he wasn't strong enough. I trained him to never show pain because pain meant failure. So when life got hard, when he started hurting, when he needed help, Michael did what I trained him to do. He handled it alone. He didn't ask for help because asking for help wasn't allowed in my house. And the only help he could find was in a needle. The addiction counselor at the hospital explained something that changed everything for me. She said, children who grow up in rigid, demanding environments often turn to substances to cope with feelings they were never allowed to express. They've been taught that their emotions are wrong, their struggles are weakness, their pain is unacceptable. Your son learned to numb himself because you taught him that feeling things was not okay. I wanted to argue, I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't. Because sitting there, looking at my broken son, I knew she was right. I thought I was making Michael strong, but strength isn't the ability to hide pain. Strength is the ability to face it, talk about it, work through it. And I'd never taught him how to do any of those things. I thought I was preparing him for the real world. But the real world requires emotional intelligence, vulnerability, the ability to ask for help. And I'd punished him every time he'd shown those qualities. I thought discipline meant control. But what I'd really taught him was fear. Fear of disappointing me. Fear of showing weakness. Fear of being human. And when you're that afraid of being human, drugs start to look like the only escape. Michael went to rehab 3 months. When he came back, I made a decision that was harder than anything I'd done in the military. I apologized. I sat my son down and I said, Michael, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I thought I was making you strong, but I was hurting you. I taught you that you couldn't come to me with problems, and that was the biggest mistake of my life. For the first time since he was maybe 8 years old, my son cried in front of me, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't tell him to stop. Michael is 46 now. He's been sober for 22 years. We talk twice a week, real conversations. He tells me about his struggles at work, his relationships, his fears, things I never let him talk about when he was growing up. He's married now, has 2 kids of his own, and watching him with them taught me the difference between discipline and love. He sets boundaries with his children. He has rules. He expects respect. But when they struggle, when they hurt, when they make mistakes, they run to him. They don't hide from him. That's what I never understood. Discipline should create safety, not fear. Rules should build trust, not walls. I see parents today making the same mistakes I made. They think love means being tough. They think strength means never showing emotion. They think preparing kids for the real world means making home feel like boot camp. But children who grow up afraid of disappointing their parents become adults who are afraid of everything. They can't take risks because failure is unacceptable. They can't form deep relationships because vulnerability is weakness. They can't ask for help because needing help means they've failed. And when life gets overwhelming, when the pain becomes too much, they find ways to numb it. Drugs, alcohol, workaholism, destructive relationships, anything to escape the voice in their head that sounds just like their parent, telling them they're not good enough. If you're a parent, if you have children in your life, please understand this. Your children don't need you to be their drill sergeant. They need you to be their safe place. They don't need you to toughen them up. The world will do that on its own. They need you to teach them that it's okay to be soft sometimes, that it's okay to struggle, that it's okay to need help. They don't need perfect discipline. They need unconditional love. I almost lost my son because I loved him the way I thought I was supposed to love him instead of the way he needed to be loved. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait until your child is lying in a hospital bed to realize that strength and fear are not the same thing. Love your children enough to let them be human. Love them enough to let them fail safely. Love them enough to let them know that coming to you with problems won't result in punishment. Because the alternative might be watching them find other ways to cope with the pain you taught them they couldn't share. I'm 80 years old. My relationship with my son is better now than it's ever been. But I'll never get back those years when he was growing up, when he needed a father and got a drill sergeant instead. You still have time, but only if you choose love over control. Only if you choose connection over perfection. Don't wait until it's almost too late to learn what I learned that night in the hospital. Your children need you to be their safety net, not their biggest critic. The choice is yours.